Okay. Hello, everybody. Hi again. This is Drew Carpenito with FranChoice, and thank you for joining me today to talk about how to go about finding and investing in a franchise that's going to be a good fit for you specifically. And it's kind of an interesting discussion because a lot of people always ask me, "Hey, Drew, what's the best and hottest franchise?" And my answer is typically I don't know, because what's a good business for one person is probably not going to be a good business for another person. And I say that because of the ownership and the effort and the skills required to build certain businesses, and certain franchises are unique to each individual, and each one requires certain skills and and abilities. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but a little bit about me here. That's a picture of me. I work for a company called FranChoice, where all I do is I help individuals who are interested in exploring franchising and business ownership. I help them figure out if there might be a franchise out there that gives them a business that puts them in the highest probability of success to achieve what it is that they want to achieve from a lifestyle standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a satisfaction standpoint, and also from an exit strategy standpoint as well. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. But I'm here. It's kind of like an executive recruiter model, in that it's a no obligation, no fee service. So basically, it's free to work with me, and I get compensated if I was to recommend a franchise to you that you invested in. So again, we can talk a little bit more about how it works, but the point is it's free to you, and just costs us time if we decide that there's a fit to work together. And I've also written a pretty extensive franchise investment guide that talks in much more detail about a lot of the principles that I'm going to talk about today and share with you today. But if you are interested in receiving a free copy of my franchise investment guide, so that you can go back and reference some of these things as you think about exploring and researching franchises, then just go onto my Facebook page and like it, and just search for Drew Carpenito, franchise consultant, and it'll pop up. And then I'll email you a copy of the guide. Okay. All right. So now onto the stuff that you are here to talk about. I think it's first just to kind of give you a lay of the land as it relates to franchising. And what I mean by that is when we say the F word and we say the word franchising, a lot of people automatically assume that we're talking about fast food or quick service restaurants or food in general. Well, I'm not here to talk to you about food. Basically, in franchising, there's two main categories. There's food and there's non-food. And we're going to focus on the non-food businesses that really can apply to people that don't have any specific industry experience, whereas food franchises tend to, you need to have some experience running a restaurant in order to give yourself the highest chance of success to be successful in that. But the franchising, as it relates to how it equates to the impact it has in the U.S. economy, it is a very pervasive aspect of our economy. To give you some quantifying data points, there's over 3,000 different franchise concepts in the United States. And franchising in the U.S. is regulated, by the Federal Trade Commission. So in order for a franchise to offer their business model and license their brand under a franchise arrangement, they have to comply with regulations by the Federal Trade Commission. And there's also certain state requirements in about 13 or 14 states. But the point is, it's regulated, which the reason it's regulated is because the regulations are in the favor of the consumer or the prospective franchisee to help them with a transparent research process and transparent information that franchise companies have to provide to prospective franchisees, so that franchisees can do the proper due diligence to figure out if investing in a certain franchise is the right fit for them. We'll talk a little bit more about specifically what's included in that. But of the 3,000 different franchise concepts available, there's almost 800,000 actual franchise establishments or franchise units operating and servicing customers, collecting money, and transacting in our economy, which that's a big number. And those 800,000 employ over 8 million people. And that equates to about a $750 billion economic output in our economy. So it's a very, very pervasive aspect of what's happening in the economy, which, franchising is thriving. I mean, candidly, it's beating a lot of industries that are out there. But what we have here are is a chart that I put together that is from a report that was published by the International Franchise Association, which is the kind of the industry leading body in franchising. They put out a lot of research. They put out a lot of great resources for people who are interested in looking at franchising. But the point here is, if you look at the list on the left-hand side there in the chart, you see that there are a number of different categories of franchises out there, and the ones that have the orange check marks next to them are non-real estate, non-lodging, and non-food businesses. And so if you combine all of those different franchises, you see that equates to about 51% of the franchise units out there. And these are the ones that can appeal to folks that don't have any industry experience. Now, where this presentation is going to focus on is that all those 51% of franchises are not going to be a fit for just anybody. So what we're going to talk about is how to go about figuring out where to focus your time and effort on franchises that are going to be within your ballpark of the criteria that are going to, again, put you in the highest probability of success for achieving whatever it is you want to achieve. Now, a couple of myths real quick about franchising. A lot of people think, hey, if I invest more money in a franchise, or if a franchise requires more money to get a unit open, then it probably means that there's the more potential for return, right? More investment, more potential for return. That's false. There is absolutely no cause and effect between the amount of the investment and the amount of the potential return. A lot of the businesses that cash flow the most amount of money on the bottom line can be service businesses that have no overhead, have few employees, don't have a lot of moving parts, but they're very, very profitable. So just keep in mind that you do not need to look at the higher investment businesses if you want to, if you have aggressive financial goals. There's a lot of different ways to different models, different categories to look at it. There's also, I think, a pervasive myth that people think, oh, well, I need a brand name like McDonald's, like Chick-Fil-A, like Taco Bell, like Burger King, like Subway, where people, everyday consumers are aware of it in order for it to be worth my time and investment. Well, that's false too, because what we're going to talk about as well is, what do quality franchise companies do really, really well that help their franchisees replicate their very proven and their very successful business model. Now, I say quality because there is, like any industry, there are quality, profitable, successful franchise businesses out there with good franchise companies that help their franchisees replicate their business models. And then there are not so quality companies that you want to stay away from. And we'll talk about kind of what to look for in quality companies so you can identify those. And a lot of people also come to me and to ask and say, hey, if I'm the franchise owner, am I going to have to be behind the counter all day? And that's absolutely false. A lot of franchise owners have built businesses where they're not even involved in the day-to-day, week-to-week operations. They have a staff of people that run the business, and that's part of one of the advantages of entrepreneurship, is that lifestyle flexibility that comes with running a successful business. So, what does all this mean? Well, the question is, where do you start? And what we're going to talk about is, it's a little bit of a backward process. Whereas most people, the first place they start by researching franchises and trying to find one that might be a fit is the internet, right? Start Googling what's the most profitable franchise, what are the best franchises. You go to all the different franchise ranking websites, entrepreneur.com, Franchise Business Review, and guess what? All the rankings are completely different. And those, a lot of times, I've been an executive with franchise companies, and a lot of it's pay for play. To be quite candid with you, there are very few purely objective sources out there that truly have a criteria that can define the best franchises. And it's it doesn't even matter, because at the end of the day, fundamentally, the process starts with you. And what it starts with is figuring out what is your personal criteria in the business that you want to have. Starts with, almost like a whiteboarding session to think through what are your strengths, and what are your skills, and what do you like to do, and what are your personality traits that you enjoy utilizing on a day-to-day basis, and what are the situations that make you really uncomfortable that you want to avoid in your business. And you can craft that criteria on a whiteboard and establish it, and then use that as the framework to go out and do your search. Now, when you do your search, you're not going to find franchises that they're not going to publish the aspects of their business model that align with the different factors, the criteria that you're using. So you're going to have to do some digging. But fundamentally, you are the one that's going to make the franchise, that whatever franchise you decide to invest in, if you decide to invest in one, successful. So starting with you and then focusing on businesses that utilize your strengths, utilize your skills, and will make you happy and feel fulfilled, and obviously align with your financial and lifestyle goals as well. That is where you want to start. And then you use that criteria to go out and measure franchise companies against it. And at the end of the day, one of the biggest measuring points of any franchise is going to be talking to the current existing franchise owners of any brand and talking to them and having candid conversation with them. And they're going to share information with you. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is to figure out, hey, do I identify with these individuals? And do I feel like they have similar goals, similar skills, similar strengths to me, which is going to be some anecdotal information that's going to help you to figure out if this franchise is the franchise business that's going to, again, maximize your probability of success and reduce your risk of the other stuff, which, there's no magic bullet in franchising. But the thing that people like about franchising the most is it gives people all the upside of having their own business and being an entrepreneur and having the control and the security and the freedom that comes along with that, as well as the opportunity financially and lifestyle wise, while reducing the risk of the other option, which is either buying an existing business, which is very expensive, or starting a business from scratch on your own, which is very, very risky. So the slide here in front of you, one of the biggest traps that I see people fall into when researching franchises is the consumer mindset trap. But what I mean by that is they hear somebody in the neighborhood say, man, I wish we had so-and-so type of business around here. And boom, a light bulb goes off in their head and says, boom, I need to go out and find a business that can solve that problem because one of my neighbors said they wanted this. Or my kids love the ice cream shop that's around the corner from us, and I see that there's a line outside the door all day, every day. Well, the reality of running an ice cream shop is it's an owner-operator business because the margins are pretty low. So you can't afford to staff a manager into that. So you're the one that's going to be behind the counter running that business. And if you don't want to be doing that, then that's not a good business for you, and you're not going to be very happy. So it's almost like we attack the consumer side last. We want to make sure we have a proven business model that's solving a problem in the economy that has ample and a prolific amount of demand for our supply or service or product, but do not look at the business through the consumer lens because it could take you down a rat hole, number one, and it can also cause you to ignore or overlook business opportunities that could be the right fit for you. And a lot of the best franchises out there are everyday businesses that you probably pass 20 to 30 of them a day in your daily living, and maybe never even think twice about, hey, that would be a great business, because they're not always the sexiest businesses or the flashiest businesses or the most media friendly businesses, but they're good fundamental businesses that have ample demand and good business models to ultimately have a profitable business model around. So just beware of the consumer mindset and some of the traps it can take down. So when we talk about the key criteria, one of the single most important aspects of getting it right and investing in a business that's going to be aligned with what you want to be doing is, what role do you want to have in customer acquisition? And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, everything in business starts with acquiring and retaining a customer. So that is the single most important thing, right? It brings in the revenue. From the revenue, we pay our expenses, and everything else is left over, falls to the bottom line for profit for us, right? Well, there are different customer acquisition strategies in businesses and small businesses and franchises that require different things from an owner. One of them is an outbound business development requirement, where for people who love being the face of the business and out in the community and networking and meeting people and promoting their business and whatnot, then then businesses that require that from the owner are going to be a good fit. For other people who aren't comfortable with being the face of the business, being out in the community, networking, shaking hands, kissing babies, promoting their business, that's going to lend itself to more of an inbound customer acquisition model. And what I mean by that, from an inbound standpoint, that tends to lend itself to, number one, a brick and mortar location, or number two, a service business that thrives off of very strong customer acquisition strategies driven by traditional advertising in internet, social media, direct mail, and other media buys, where basically you invest in a marketing strategy, it makes the phone ring, you or one of your staff talks to the customers and then converts them into a paying customer. That's an inbound model. So you kind of have two different options and then a little bit of a continuum between there. But that is one of the biggest pieces, because if you were to pick a business that requires a strong outbound effort and you aren't comfortable in an outbound effort, then that's going to be a problem. And you're not going to be very happy, and you're probably not going to be very successful with it. The other piece is management style, right? How many employees do you want? Do you want to be involved in the day-to-day aspects of the business, or do you prefer to delegate to people who run the day-to-day aspects? There are businesses out there that are manager run, where what I mean by that is that the franchise owner isn't involved interfacing with customers. They're behind the scenes. They're managing through a manager. They're building a team. They're cultivating a culture. They're empowering their employees to be better people, be better staff members, be better team members, and ultimately working through a manager to do that. Same thing kind of ties into leadership preferences, right? Funding. 50% of the battle is being properly capitalized. And being properly capitalized requires a whole conversation in and of itself. There are a lot of different ways to fund businesses, but the three major components of being properly capitalized are having enough money to cover the startup expenses, having enough money set aside in working capital to cover the operating expenses of the business once it's open and operating, until the business has enough revenue coming in to cash flow itself and then to cash flow you personally. And the third piece is your personal working capital, right? Do you have income coming in from a spouse that might be working, or are you going to have to set aside an additional bucket of money to cover your personal living expenses until the business is cash flowing itself and then having enough cash left over to pay you? So there's three main pieces of it. You get it right. We could talk about the different strategies of funding. Traditional loans, there's a couple of non-traditional strategies. Like there's ways to utilize pre-tax retirement funds and not have to pay any penalties or early or taxes through that. And there's companies that specialize in that. But the economics of the business, what are the unit economics of the business? This is part of the research process we'll talk about. And is the potential there to achieve the financial goal that you want? Can you do it with a single location, or maybe you need to look at multiple locations? How many employees do you want? Some businesses require 0 employees. Some businesses require a handful of employees. Some businesses require 10 employees. Well, if you in your career prefer working with smaller teams, then businesses that have fewer employees are probably going to be a good fit. If you have no preference and you want to build a nice big empire of a business, then the number of employees shouldn't be that important to you. Overhead. Some people want businesses that have lower overhead. They can be home-based. Some people aren't concerned as long as the economics work. And then there's the aspect of, hey, how do I want my product or service that the business offers to be impacting my community and my customer? Do I want to offer a business that has a positive impact in my customers' lives? Or quite frankly, I'm not too concerned about that. I'm more concerned with a business that makes money that gives me the highest chance of success. So my point in all that is there are a ton of different pieces of criteria to think about, to flesh out first, that becomes that framework that you utilize to measure franchise businesses against. And that's one of the things that I help folks that I work with do, is we spend a lot of time focusing on that criteria and fleshing it out and establishing it and getting it nailed down so that we all agree on exactly what we're looking for, and then try to match businesses against it. So when we talk about quality in franchising, we talk about quality franchise opportunities and businesses, and also franchisors, right? What do the quality franchisors look like? And what should you keep your eye out for? Well, first thing is to understand the different business models that are out there in franchising. You have your traditional owner-operator business, which basically you're going to be the owner, you're going to be the general manager, you're going to be interfacing with the customers, you might be the back end interfacing with the employees as well, but everything's going to kind of flow through you. And these are typically lower investment, higher margin businesses that don't have a lot of overhead. They're typically might not even require a brick and mortar location. You can run them out of your house. You can run them out of a very small office with some warehouse space. The next category is what we call the executive model, which is more of a model that starts with having employees that are doing different aspects of the business, and you're more managing those employees, but you're still involved in the business on a day-to-day basis, interacting with the business, but maybe not being the face of the business, interacting with the customers as much, more behind the scenes with the employees, but you're still kind of, casting the strategy and whatnot. And then the third category is what we call semi-absentee or manager-run businesses, where basically your main role is to run the business through the manager. So you are delegating and empowering a manager who's going to be running the staff of that location. These are typically brick and mortar locations. But what's interesting about the semi-absentee business is that it's typically a 15 to 20 hour a week commitment. So if you have a job that has flexibility in it during the 9 to 5 working hours, then you typically can keep that job and maintain that income stream, the W-2 income stream, while you're building out your business. And a lot of folks in the corporate world opt for these types of businesses because it offers a nice transition strategy to build up a business, get the cash flow coming in, and then of the business while you're maintaining your W-2 income stream. And then once you're ready to make the jump from the corporate world to kind of get out of the rat race or whatever it might be, then you have a business that you can transition into that's already cash flowing. So the effect on income is minimal. So when we're talking about what you want to look for in the quality franchise companies out there, not just the business model, but we're talking about the management team, the organization itself, the whole 9 yards. Well, one of the beautiful things about franchising we talked about earlier is it's regulated. And part of what any franchise company is going to provide to you as part of the research process is a thing called the franchise disclosure document. And these franchise disclosure documents are very extensive documents. There's a ton of information in it. But one of the most important pieces of information in it is the track record of the franchised locations and the corporate locations, meaning the franchise companies have to publish how many stores or locations they've opened and how many have been closed. Well, by looking at their item 20, which is where this information in the franchise disclosure document is disclosed, you can see where you can see what their track record is, and there's typically going to be some attrition in any kind of organization, especially when the numbers get bigger. But if the numbers are out of whack and you're seeing that there are a lot of locations closing, then that tells you that's not a very good franchise system. If they have a very strong track record of success, then you can check this box and focus on the next boxes to analyze. Systems, infrastructure, and technology. This is one of the overlooked aspects of franchising that quality companies do really, really well in terms of providing their franchisees with different tools and processes and procedures that enable them to run the business much more efficiently and also have a significant competitive edge against their competitors. The good franchise companies basically give their franchisees Fortune 100 type tools and technology that they can use from an analytic standpoint, from a metric standpoint, from a streamlined standpoint, getting rid of the paper and automating a lot of different aspects. Centralizing call centers is very common in the quality franchise companies, where they have a centralized call center that does all the scheduling, booking, and dispatching for their franchisees. The franchisees don't have to staff that piece of the business, so that there's a significant cost savings there to the franchisees as well as an efficiency standpoint. So good franchise companies are going to have some very strong systems underneath the hood of the business model that you have to learn about only by peeking under the hood and analyzing what they have. They're also going to have very, very strong training and ongoing support, which you can learn about directly from the franchise companies, but you can also get really good feedback from the franchise owners themselves on the quality of that support and the training and how good it is. The leadership management team is a big piece of this as well. You will have the opportunity to meet who the CEOs, the founders, the presidents, the directors of support and training, the marketing directors and their teams, through the research process of any franchise, and you want to know who these people are and what's the turnover rate look like at the corporate office and whatnot. And you'll have an opportunity to do that. Unit economics, another thing that which is exciting and nice, and from a transparency standpoint, from the franchise disclosure document piece of it, is that a lot of franchise companies will disclose the financial performance of their business model and their franchisees in item 19 of the franchise disclosure document. Some companies, let me back up. Franchise companies do not have to disclose any type of financial information in their franchise disclosure document in the item 19, but good quality franchise companies are proud to say, hey, here are the unit economics of our business model, and here's the financial performance of our franchisees. Here's their top line sales. Here's the middle. Here's their cost of goods sold. Here's their overhead, and here's the bottom line. And it's just good information for you to have to kind of figure out what the major levers of the business are, so you can understand if the business aligns with exactly what it is that you want to achieve. Culture is a vital piece of the picking the right franchise for yourself, because one of the best benefits of joining a good, healthy, quality franchise system is the soft benefits that come along from the peer-to-peer aspects of networking with fellow franchise owners and getting best practices from your neighbors, or just the overall culture that gets cultivated from a network of 50 to 100 to 200 fellow franchise owners building the same business and evolving the business model and finding new ways of doing things even more effectively or more efficiently, or basically how to make more money. That is one of the best aspects of franchising when it's done right. And so you'll get a feel for the culture when you talk to the corporate office and we talk to the franchisees. And if it's it should be a culture that's thriving and people are happy and they're profitable, right? So the last bullet point is the single biggest, easiest metric to figure out if the franchise is healthy is, are the franchisees happy and are they profitable? And if you can answer those two questions about a franchise system, you can determine if it's a healthy system. Now, whether that business model is a fit for you or not, that's still, that would still require some additional thought. But you want to understand what the health of the franchise system is, and that is the single easiest way to do it. And that you get that by talking to the franchisees. So, all this said, hopefully you kind of learn a little bit more about franchising here and how to attack it, how to research it, which is the single most important piece of this whole thing, is doing the research the right way and focusing on businesses that are in your wheelhouse, and then figuring out if one of them is the right fit for you. So when you think through the franchise due diligence process, it basically kind of boils down to 3 big steps that require 2 to 4 hours a week, and maybe over a 30-day period, right? You've got the conceptualization point of it, which is when you're working directly with the franchise company after you initially reach out, or I would connect you with them, to learn from a representative about the business from a 30,000 foot view, learn what the day in the life of a franchise owner is like, learn about what the key success drivers in the business are, learn about who's the most successful franchisee and what's their background, what are their skills, what are the strengths, and how does that fit with yours. Look at the franchise disclosure document, review it, ask questions. So conceptually, you're going to get enough information to kind of figure out, hey, I think this business is something that has some potential and could be a fit. And if you feel like it is, then you move on to the next step, which is called validation. And that's when you're going to validate a lot of what you just learned with actual franchise owners of that system. And all the franchise owners have been in the same shoes that you will have be in at this step. And having conversations with people who are living and breathing it every day, who just started the business or have been in the business 3 to 5 years, you're gonna get that kind of boots on the ground intel to kind of confirm what you think, or maybe you get some additional perspective and say, hey, maybe this isn't the business for me. But having those conversations is a vital piece of this. And then after the validation, you pretty much know if this is the business that for you or not. And that's when the final step would be to confirm everything by traveling to the headquarters of the franchise company and meeting with the management team and leaders and the operations team and the support folks who you'd be working with, and getting belly to belly and and just confirming everything that the research has done. So again, good quality franchise companies are going to have an organized process to help take you through each step to get all the information you need to make a fully informed decision. But it's a significant investment of your time and energy. So the next question is, right, like, where do you find quality franchise companies out there? Well, we talked a little bit about some of the franchise rankings. I mean, there's a lot of noise on the website, on the internet, excuse me. But fundamentally, you're going to want to lay out your criteria, and you're going to want to start researching the basics, and you're going to want to connect with an expert. This is just like buying a house or buying a condo or buying a piece of property. There are people like myself who have depths of experience in franchising. I didn't mention anything about me. I've been in franchising for 12 years, and I've helped a couple hundred people start, build, grow, and even sell franchises that they've been successful with. So it's all I've ever done. And it's, I'm like a realtor for people who want to look at franchises. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to work with somebody like me either, but it's one of those things that there's a lot of resources available to you if you want to utilize them. But to give you a sense of kind of what I do in how I work with candidates is we spend a lot of time up front getting to know each other, understanding who each other is. I'm very open book and very transparent about kind of what my background's been and what, the good, the bad, the ugly of franchising, to be honest with you. But the most important thing is understanding what it is that you want to achieve with this next chapter in your life, and what's that criteria that's most important to you, and how does that translate to an ideal business on paper or whiteboard. And then what I do is I go out and do a search for franchise companies that end up saving you a ton of time and effort to find good quality franchise companies that are within the ballpark of your criteria that you can start to research. And there's no obligations in any of this. Research is the key to this whole thing. And so what I do is I help direct you to focus on businesses that fit your criteria from a general level, and then you end up, going through the research process, and I help you through that to figure it all out. So my services are free. I work nationwide. I work one-on-one with all my candidates. There's no people below me. It's just me. And so if you are interested in having a conversation, that's the first step with us, is to have a 15 to 30-minute conversation and talk a little bit more about what it is that you're thinking about, and answer any questions you have about franchising, and ultimately figure out if it makes sense for us to work together. So you can email me, you can call me, you can book something on my calendar right there. I'll send you guys an email after this. So make it easy for you. But if anybody has any questions, by all means, please feel free to type them in the chat or the Q&A. I've got both of those panels open here, and I will do my best to answer any questions you might have about franchising and or anything business ownership related, and we'll go from there. So I'll keep it open for another minute to see if any questions come in. Otherwise, we'll let you get back on with the day here. And like I said, what I'm going to be doing is I'll send everybody who attended here an email. And if you're interested in having that conversation, then just get in touch with me through one of the many ways that I can, and we'll go from there. All right. So I don't see any questions coming in. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Hope you have a great day, and look for that email from me. Take care.